Today we're going to look at thread tension in the 301 stitch. I'm going to show you the ideal situation as to how that stitch is formed, show you some of the difficulties in overextension, and how to correct problems once they happen. On this diagram shows the ideal situation, the ideal balanced stitch. We have two layers of material with our center running through the middle here. It should be that this loop here from the bobbin thread, which is denoted here, this loop from the needle thread, denoted here, should be very stable in the middle of the fabric. That produces the ideal situation where the thread tension from the bobbin and the thread tension from the needle are even depending on the fabric. This situation, as we're going back to the very first diagram, we have the yellow needle thread, the red bobbin thread. We have nothing, no loop being formed or being formed by the bobbin thread. This results in either one of two situations. Either the needle thread is too loose, the bobbin thread is too tight. If also, sometimes we'll have a loop being formed here, which denotes not enough thread tension on the needle thread. This diagram shows the opposite extreme, where we have the needle thread on top of the fabric, the bobbin thread here on the bottom, and still no loop being formed by the needle thread. This situation can be usually involved with either the bobbin thread having little or not enough or no tension, or the needle thread being much too tight. Okay, this is a common problem that we see when sewing. We have the loop showing on the bobbin, the orange being the bobbin thread, or the needle thread, I'm sorry. Orange being needle thread, the lime color being the bobbin thread. And we'll see that the needle thread is not being pulled into the fabric, the bobbin thread is laying on the bottom of the fabric. So we have one of two situations. Either the bobbin thread is too tight, or the needle thread is not tight enough. Normally this is an indication that there's nowhere near enough needle thread, and there could be a number of difficulties that'll cause this. We'll get into those in just a moment. To correct the problem we were just looking at, I'm going to start in the first place with the bobbin thread. Some of the things that we see is that the bobbin thread is not tight enough. And in that case we were just looking at, we also saw that there wasn't enough needle thread tension. But I'll start with the bobbin. And we'll find out that the bobbin thread, to start with, should be enough to hold its own weight. So I should be able to pick it up out of my fingers doing this. And of course I can't. So there's obviously not enough bobbin thread tension. So I'm going to add a little bit of tension to it to make sure that I can actually lift it off my fingers so that it'll just hold its own weight. So if I wiggle it, it'll fall down. So we'll start with the bobbin there. In some of the earlier videos, we saw that this is the main tension, and it controls the tension in the stitch itself on the fabric. With the problem that we were just viewing, it means that we have not enough thread tension. So thread tension is produced here. But some of the causes of the other part of that is that long loop that's falling down underneath the fabric, is that the needle thread could be around this eyelet more than once. It could be around the needle screw. It could be missing the needle thread tension altogether. So we'll want to go back and check and make sure that those aren't the case. To check, what I do is hold on to the needle thread, and I'll hold on to here and make sure that the needle thread goes all the way in between the two discs. We're going to take a quick look to make sure that it is not wrapped around this place, and I can pull it forward to make sure that it is not. I can see that it is not, and it is not wrapped around the needle thread, the needle screw itself. Therefore, the problem lies right here with the needle thread. In most of the cases, I'll make all the adjustments that I can possibly make from here. So in the previous sample, we saw that there wasn't enough thread tension. To check the thread tension and make sure that everything is in place, We'll check to make sure it's in the discs by simply holding that on with the needle thread where it comes out of the needle and above the needle thread, and just giving it a good pull to make sure that it is between the two discs. That it is not wrapped around the take-up, it's not wrapped around the first eyelet at all, that it's not wrapped around the second eyelet, that it's not wrapped around the needle screw. In this case, none of those are there, none of those are prevalent, so we realize that the thread tension problem is with the tension itself. The bobbin thread is only, it doesn't play as big a part in the thread tension in the stitch, because all it's being done is being dragged into the seam. The needle thread is the one that does all the work, and it's the one we'll concentrate on first. We'll make as many adjustments as we can with the needle thread before we'll do anything more with the bobbin thread. We're in the position now to correct the problem of the first sample where the needle thread was not tight enough. So what I'm going to do is increase the thread tension a fair bit here till we see how it's going to come up. We're going to sew a little bit. Take it out. So you can see where I started. We still had the problem where the needle thread is still not being pulled up. We have a straight line for the bobbin thread. But as I increase the tension, we can see that it's starting to come up, pull into the fabric where it should be. Ideally, we should not see the yellow on the back or the lime green on the back, and in this case, we see it, so therefore I'm a little too tight. So we're going to back this up a little bit. One of the difficulties with doing these, with getting balanced tensions, that here at Climate Technical Gear we have a number of fabrics, like this one we were sewing, where that crossover between the two fabrics is the same thickness as the fabric. And therefore all we can do is balance it and make it the same on either side. During the actual manufacturing processes, those can be altered, but that will be up to quality control and supervisors to dictate how that works. You can just see the top of that there. If we turn it over, we still can't see any of the orange showing back through, so I'm going to loosen it off just a little bit more. We can't see the lime green coming through any longer. We need a couple of little tiny bits of spaces. And we're just starting to see the orange show through. Again, as I said, this fabric is very thin, very light fabric. So what I will do, my attempt here would be to balance that. And if I can see a couple of little places of the orange on this side, and a couple of little places of the lime on this side, I would then say that that is balanced.